art nerds, today I'd like to walk you through my preparations for teaching a new art class. Now, my preparations vary depending on what kind of class I'm teaching and the duration of the class. Preparing for an 8-week class is very different from preparing for a 2-hour class, which is very different from preparing for a half-day workshop. And even how I'm teaching the class and where I'm teaching the class will greatly change how I actually prepare for and eventually present the class. So for this preparation, I'm actually preparing for a 1-hour Zoom class, the Art Squad, but I'm not just preparing for that, I'm actually preparing for a tutorial that I'm also recording for YouTube in case any of my students want a little supplemental information. So the Zoom classes that I'm teaching, this is really more of an art club, and it's generally a lot looser than if I were teaching a class. But I wanted to handle this tutorial on how I prepare for classes as though I were teaching a 1-hour long class on how I draw hair, or how one can teach themselves how to draw hair. So this preparation tutorial includes me doing the studies necessary to develop the skills, walking myself through the process so that I'm better able to teach it, and generating printables like these here. There is a lot of preparation, a lot of study, and a lot of using my sketchbook, which I heavily advocate if you are an art teacher of any type wanting to teach something, to practice beforehand, to study it beforehand, and that kind of helps you collect your thoughts. So originally this was going to be presented as part of my weekly vlog, but so many people have asked me how I go about teaching classes, how I go about working with libraries, how I go about presenting my material and organizing my material, that I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a standalone tutorial on the subject. I am also going to release the hair tutorial that you guys see segments of as its own video at a later date. So if you guys enjoy the work I do here on the channel, if you find it helpful, useful, or informative, if you're an art teacher yourself and you're utilizing the resources that I create here on the channel to teach your own students or to entertain your students, it would really help me out a lot if you join me over on Patreon. Not only will you gain access to printables like these that you can use in your own classes, you'll get early access to videos like this one. I'm moving the majority of my tutorials to Patreon and Ko-fi only, so they will no longer be publicly available. And you'll also gain access to my ginormous resource docs where I list everything you need for a particular class. You'll get access to my presentations, and I would be happy to work with you to teach Zoom classes with your school or with your group. So if you like the work I do here, you get so much more if you join me at patreon.com/natosoup. Not only do you gain access to things, but it also helps me earn income, which I later put into the channel, whether I'm buying nicer recording material, whether I'm buying supplies that I commonly use when recording videos, or maybe I'm buying things that just make the videos nicer backdrops, nicer lighting, turntables for my art supply reviews. I always put the money that I earn on Patreon back into the channel in some way, shape, or form. If you guys have questions about teaching art, if you have questions about my background, if you have questions about art education, or how you can pursue this yourself, how you can make it happen and what you need to make it happen, you can let me know down in the comments below. I would be happy to do follow-up videos. I just need to know what you guys want to know. And I would also be happy to do a live stream where I demonstrate the process. I'm just trying to make art education something that is more accessible for more people, and I know a lot of people are teaching themselves how to draw. They're also teaching themselves how to teach art, so if I can help make that process easier, I'm happy to do so. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this walkthrough, and I hope you guys will let me know what your questions are so I can do some follow-up videos. So first of all, a little bit of a flex. I don't know how much you'd consider this a flex, but it's a flex. These are various iterations of presentations that I've done, with some of my favorites being Learn to Draw Anything, From Stick to Figure, and Manga Madness. Those are some of my favorites. And I think the one I'm looking for today is going to be in Manga Madness because I already printed out a bunch of the how to draw hair, but I wanted to show you guys the source material. And basically anytime I'm teaching in person and I know I have a projector, I make one of these, which is not always great. But what is great is that my amazing art nerds on Patreon have gotten all of these at some point in the past. So there's a lot more of what I'm making that you guys don't necessarily get to see. And again, my awesome art nerds on Patreon will get to see the whole thing of this. And I do try to zhuzh it up every time I teach. But what I'm looking for, it might not be in here. I have revised this thing so many times. Let me scroll. Talking about faces. This is a really in-depth presentation too. This one is one that's kind of designed to stand alone as learning through the presentation. And I just want to make sure, oh, I'm missing a basic shapes printout. See, I'm double checking it to make sure I have everything I'm looking for. So let's see if I can find the original basic shapes sketch. And let me double check against what I've printed to see if I actually printed it. And I did actually print it. Okay, good job. Check plus. You know, when you're ADHD, you really have to, this one's neat. Doop, 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 doop. You really have to overthink things sometimes. Okay. Otherwise, I think I'm covered. Okay, so these are what I printed out. These are really more for my reference than for the kids, but I may end up emailing my co-host and seeing if she wants to send these out to them. But it's also nice for me to have because not all of them have a printer or have access to a printer, so I can kind of show them during the stream if they need the additional help. And this is to demonstrate how different art styles are going to draw hair different ways. So typically, the more realistic the art style is, and to be fair, this is still very cartoony. It's not really a realistic style. The more realistic, kind of the more detail you're going to add to the hair. And that's not always the case, but it is often, it's kind of a good cheat that works well. And it's going to vary style by style, so it's really up to the artist. But this is kind of what I wanted the most, was it shows the basic hair growth pattern on the head, and that's going to vary so much person to person. And then individual, what I think of as hair zones, so the front of the hair, the bangs, the sides that come in front of the ears, and then the back of the hair. Really, I should be recording this for my main tutorial. All right, so next I want to get some practical practice in. I want to warm up my hands and get my mind in the right mindset. And this is one of the reasons I implore art teachers to keep a sketchbook or to draw or to practice, because I forget, even if I do it every single day, which I do, I draw almost every single day, I still forget things, especially if I need to teach them. And doing some practice, doing some studies helps me re-articulate what I want to show them and what I want to teach. And one of the big points I've been saying a lot is you don't have to be good, you just have to do it. So I like doing my sketches and my studies in my sketchbook using color pencil. You can use whatever you like. You can do it digitally if that works for you. And I'm just Googling hairstyles, and I want to try and capture, for my studies right now, a variety of hairstyles, a variety of ethnicities, a variety of genders, because just for my own practice, it's good to be flexible and it's good to have new ideas. And who knows, while I'm doing these studies, I may think that hairstyle would be so cute on Naomi, or that would be really good on Kara, or, oh hey, I need to design Tanner's dad. I'm not super sure what he looks like. This hairstyle would be useful for him. So as a comic artist doing these kind of studies pays dividends because not only am I putting the practice in, I'm warming up my hands, I'm getting experience drawing different things, but I'm also getting ideas for future characters and maybe even for future stories. So I'm just on Google and I just Googled hairstyles. You can go to Pinterest. Pinterest is full of different hairstyles. You can and just do like hairstyle inspiration. And if you want to practice drawing a specific ethnicity or a specific type of hair, you might look up like curly hair inspiration, something like that, or men's haircut inspiration, or haircuts for men with long hair inspiration, or beards if we're drawing facial hair. The internet is your friend. Well, often is not your friend, but referencing is your friend. If you're teaching this in person, you might want to print some of these out. You can't always rely on having an internet connection, and if you have printouts, then the kids can pass them around. I usually put them in the presentation so they're up there, and I often work in opportunities where it's like, let's practice drawing this together, and I'll do it on the whiteboard and kind of narrate as I'm going along what I'm doing. And then I go around and I kind of help them out individually, because a lot of it is also learning how to think critically about what you're seeing, how to internalize that, and how to utilize that. So I've got my reference. Some of these are real weird, but like there's like a girl with like you guys cannot see this, but it's like a basket weave in her hair, and I might have to try to draw that because that is just intense. But I'm having trouble sharpening my pencil, so I definitely need to do that. And I'm also going to be recording the actual tutorial part of this. I'm not sure if I'm going to narrate as I do the studies, or if I'm just going to do the studies and narrate over them, or if I'm just going to draw the studies and include that as time-lapse as something optional. But this is just part of the prep, and that kind of gives me options. So let's get to it. Before I forget, another thing I want to point out, and I got to open Discord for this, and I'll do this while I'm sharpening my pencils, is last night while I was in bed, I was kind of thinking about what I wanted today to look like. And you can do this in your planner. Sometimes I do it in my planner, but I was in bed. I wasn't going to get up and get my planner to do this. I made an outline of how I wanted to handle my class prep today. So I have do a page of hair studies, print out hair pages from presentation, maybe make a new and improved base head or male and female base heads, maybe front, profile, side views, record hair tutorial if possible. And it's Monday. I could do, got a good point on that. I could do some of that tomorrow. But I do have the wood burning chill stream tomorrow, so I want to kind of get as much done today as possible. I could do it Wednesday, but if I generate assets, I want to send them out to my co-hosts so that they can get that out to the Prismacolors break so much. They can get that out to the students, the kiddos, the art squatters, squatties. I don't know. That sounds bad. Art squatters. I don't know. We got to workshop a name for them. Get them out to our club members in time where if they could print them, whether it go to the library, ask to print it at school, print it at home, they would be able to do so. So that's something you want to kind of keep in mind if you're doing Zoom stuff and they have to print stuff so they can draw on top of it. You want to get that out to them early so they actually have time to do it, because not everybody has a home printer. You might have to ask a parent to print it at work, and that might take a couple days. You might have to print it at school, and if you're on an A-B schedule, that might take a couple days. You might have to print it at the library, and your parents might not have time to take you, so that might take a couple days. So if you are doing online remote stuff, you want to get the materials out to your students not a month early, because they're going to forget. But like at the start of the week, that would be pretty ideal.
So throughout this tutorial, I'm going to include segments where you guys can see me doing studies and practicing, because I really want to drive home how important it is to actually practice drawing, practice the material before you actually go about teaching the class. And I want you guys to see how much practice I put in before. Honestly, we spent 15 minutes talking about how to draw hair, but For me, this practice pays off because it allows me to record the tutorial with confidence, and it's also practicing drawing, and that's really important. So one of the things I want to go ahead and point out is when it comes to studying how to draw hair, it's really important to draw the structure of the head first and then be able to put the hair on top of it. And if you don't know how to structure a head, I have tutorials here on the channel that'll help you out, or I'd be happy to do a live stream where I do some live demonstrations. So as I'm doing studies in my sketchbook, I'm also taking notes in a document of things I'm noticing while I'm doing my studies. Now, I could narrate out loud to the camera, but that would get really stream of consciously. I probably wouldn't go back through that, and it might be a little incoherent because, as I've mentioned to you guys a bajillion times, I can't draw and talk at the same time if I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing to either. So I have to focus, but typing actually uses a different part of my brain, I guess, and I'm able to type and draw, and it is fine. So as I'm going along, I am taking notes, and those are points I want to cover later when I'm actually doing the actual factual tutorial rather than just practicing along and doing studies. Something else I'm paying attention to is I'm paying attention to the movement of the hair. I probably should be drawing arrows in this to kind of indicate that. That would make it easier for other people to understand the movement of the hair as I'm drawing it. But right now, these studies are really for me, to help me practice, to help me get my thoughts straight, and to help me create a better tutorial when I'm actually making the tutorial. Okay, so right now I'm mostly just coloring something in. So I figure I can probably talk and draw at the same time. I do want to say it is a big hindrance. I used to be better about being able to talk and draw at the same time. It's just gotten worse since I've had more migraines and since my ADHD seems to have gotten worse. So there may have been some kind of damage there. And I definitely feel a loss of it because it doesn't allow me to be the kind of teacher I want to be. But I do try to do a lot of live demos when able. And when we're doing art squad stuff, so the thing is with the art squad, everything I am preparing right now is, they're not going to be able to see all of that. You know, we only have an hour. So this is partially for me and me skill building and me adding to my own repertoire of things I'm comfortable with and things I have reference for and things I've practiced. It's me putting the time in and building those fine motor skills, which is something I have been kind of neglecting to do. I haven't been doing as many studies as I used to, and it's something I definitely miss. And it also allows me to better teach this topic in the future, and it also allows me to create a tutorial that I can share with you guys. So I definitely see it as kind of an investment,
but I'm just gonna sit here and practice drawing hair, practice drawing different types of hair for a while, probably for at least a couple of hours, so that I'm fresh, and I have cogent thoughts on it instead of, like, you know, trying to remember things. And it's easier for me when I'm doing studies to do them realistic, semi-realistic. I mean, I'm never aiming for photorealistic, but I'm aiming for a strong likeness, and then simplify it from there. So what I recommend when you're doing studies, that you try to stick really close to the reference, and then maybe redraw it more cartoony, or try drawing it with abstract shapes, or do your more realistic studies first, and then break it down into something more cartoony or more playful or more stylistic. Hopefully, I'm also modeling for those of you who aren't sure how to go about doing studies, how to start internalizing that knowledge. Hopefully, I'm modeling one method for doing so. I'm not purporting that this is the best method, 100% guaranteed to make you better at drawing, but it probably will make you better at drawing. Now, I do acknowledge, as I have acknowledged many, many times, that, you know, different people have different learning styles, and everybody kind of needs to figure out how they learn best and then go about doing that. So what I used to do when I was younger and really struggled to learn how to draw things was I would draw the same thing over and over and over again, like 10 times, and then try to draw it from memory to just kind of get it to stick in the old brain box a little bit better. And as you get better at drawing and as you build your hand-eye coordination and your fine motor skills, you're going to find you don't have to do it as repetitively. And that does, I will admit, add a lot of wear and tear to your hands. So just because that method was the method I used doesn't necessarily make it the best method for you. Another method that might work really well for you is drawing and taking notes at the same time, because you're engaging both parts of your brain and you're internalizing more of what you're learning and you're putting it into another. So it is a common, not a common, I wish, it is a often lauded teaching technique to try and make the subject matter, like bring it into another dimension. So for example, if you're learning how to spell, instead of just writing the word or trying rote memorization, you might put the words to a song, and that helps with, sorry, it's hard for me to draw and internalize what I'm drawing and talk to you guys. And so, like, for an example, learning how to spell mouse, right? You might go back to the old chestnut, M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E. Well, by taking notes while you're drawing, you're doing something similar. You are taking what you see visually and what your hands have done, and you're also adding another dimension to it.
Some people may also find talking themselves through it to be really, really useful. And I'll try to model that in a minute. It'll be a little bit difficult for you guys to see. So I'm drawing this adorable little girl way back here. She's got her hair up in braids and some of it's loose in curls, and it's just so cute. And so let's say I want to focus on how the curls look to me. And they've kind of got this, they're wavy, but they're kind of forming like loops, at least from where I'm seeing visually. And then some of them double back like that. And they don't just come straight down, they come down and kind of form an S curve as they kind of hit her neck and her back. So by verbalizing what I'm drawing, I'm also adding in auditory senses. So depending on how you learn, the more senses you involve, the more you're going to retain the information. And that's something I actually love about teaching, is it forces, when I'm teaching drawing especially, and so something I like to do when we have time is I like to have the kids draw from reference. And I like to draw from reference, modeling drawing from reference while they're drawing from reference. And I will verbalize my process as I'm drawing for them. Then I'll go around and I'll help each kid individually with what they're struggling with. And this is amazing. It's like a total body workout except for art. Because if there are problems with your thought process, if there are problems with your demonstration process, the kids are going to have questions, or the adults are going to have questions. They're going to want to know why you did this and how you did that. And it forces you, if you're a good teacher, you got to think on your feet. You got to be able to answer those questions, and you have to have a why. And this is just the way I do it isn't necessarily good enough for most people. I mean, it might be good enough when you're just drawing by yourself. Yeah, I do it this way because that's how I do it. But when you're teaching other people, if you want them to learn, and they want to learn, they're going to want to know why. Why do we do X, Y, Z? Okay, like with anime, right? Noses are often caricatured as an L shape. Why do they do that? That's the shadow of the nose. So when you're replicating that in your own art, you want to move that shadow around depending on the light source. Sometimes it might be a big L, sometimes it might be like a little V under the nose, and it kind of varies based on the light source. So once you know why they did what they did, once you thought about it critically and you understood the rationale, you can change it to suit your needs and to suit your art style instead of just copying it. So something else about doing studies is you don't have to just do it from photo reference. If you like how somebody draws something, you can do master studies of their drawings, so long as you're not presenting it as your own work. I mean, master studies are a thing. They used to be very commonly taught in art in order to help people understand and level up. I mean, that's kind of the standing on the shoulders of giants adage. Each artist learns from the prior generation of artists and all the artists who came before them, which, tying it back, is why I don't like the term self-taught artist. I like the term self-directed artist, because we're all learning from other people all the time. And that's part of being a social creature in a social setting. And the internet counts as social. You're looking at other people's art. So I'm not going to necessarily demonstrate it right now. I might demonstrate it later if I get to that. But doing studies of how other people draw things is a great way to really level up your drawing. And you can, if you're teaching it, you can present it to your students and encourage them to do the same thing. As Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Don't steal whole cloth though. Just take one or two elements from each artist you admire, spend a lot of time practicing those elements from reference, and eventually you've put your own twist on it and it becomes your own.
So when you're doing studies for class prep, it's really helpful to take notes, not just for yourself, that's going to make you a stronger artist, but you may decide to show your students your sketchbook. I've found that students tend to respond really well when I haul out the sketchbook because they can see that I've put the time, the thought, and the energy into the topic. This isn't just something I randomly decided to teach them one day, which is fun too, but it shows that I put time and consideration into the material that I'm presenting them. It also gives them a peek into how other artists think, which even as a
forever student. I love seeing how other artists think. I love seeing other artists' notes. I love learning from other artists. So keeping notes in your sketchbook, doing exploded views, doing views where you go in and you really study the subject in depth is not only great for you as a teacher and a fellow artist yourself, but it's a wonderful tool to show your students. So one of the downsides of all of this is it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of prep. It takes a lot of effort. It is definitely a big time investment. And while I think it makes me a better teacher than I would be if I didn't do this kind of prep, and while there are ways I can reuse and repurpose the information in later presentations and later classes, offer it via Patreon, it's still a lot of work. Like, let's not joke. It is several hours of work. And I definitely think it's worth it. I'm not resentful of the time it takes or regretful of the time it takes, but I definitely want to be honest with you guys. So anytime I'm teaching something for the first time, whether it's alcohol marker 101, the first time I ever taught that, or watercolor basics, or a comic class, I'll spend about 1 week of prep for each 2-hour class. Sometimes it takes more, sometimes it rarely takes less. Even if it's a topic I have written about and done a bunch of videos on, it still takes a week of prep for me to feel ready to teach that subject. So I don't know if that's normal for other teachers, but that's just where I'm at. And you know, it can definitely be a lot, because my life isn't just teaching art. In fact, I only teach art right now for 1 hour every 2 weeks, and if we're not counting YouTube videos. You know, most of my life is not teaching art, but I am working on building a body of work that theoretically I should be able to send it to other people. Theoretically they would watch it. Theoretically they would take it seriously. That is usually not really what happens in reality, which is why word of mouth and good recommendations from people you've worked from in the past and having a work history can be hugely important and one of the most challenging aspects for some of us. I had done an Inku crate unboxing. I cleaned off the table, and it's been a couple of hours. Now I gotta get back to the same old grind. That's what I mean by this is a really big time investment for me if I'm gonna feel like I'm giving it my best. So I have to make sure I start early enough. You certainly don't want to start the night before prepping. That's disrespectful to your students, and you're really kind of setting yourself up for failure. Unless it's a topic you've taught many times, then you might just need a refresher. Or you teach it so often you don't need a refresher because it is constantly fresh. Those are different circumstances, but where we're going, there isn't a set lesson plan. So in order to prepare well and to do a good job, we have to prepare in advance, and we have to prepare a lot. And as somebody with ADHD, that means, like I told you guys, I have to practice a lot, and try to involve different senses and try to find as many ways I can to reach my students, because as someone who has unique learning needs myself, I need certain accommodations, or I benefit from certain accommodations. I can't say I've gotten those accommodations, but I sure know how to make those accommodations at home. But I don't want to do that to my students. I don't want them to have to live that life. So I try to have as many accommodations in place as possible so that I can meet their needs to the best of my ability.
Okay, so I'm not really done doing the hair studies that I want to do. I haven't done any male hair studies yet. That's to come though. But it's time for me to generate some templates that can be distributed. So I created templates a while back, like 4 years ago, for Nashville Public Library. And it's really time for a fresh template. So I kind of wanted to share that process with you guys. Now, ideally, I think art teachers should, in general, generate their own templates, because if it's your materials, you can walk people through them a little bit better because you know them, and you can answer questions a little bit better. But I do share my templates on Patreon, you know, in case other teachers want to use them, in case my patrons want to use them for home use. I do like it when people, if you're going to use it for a class, I would really appreciate it if you let me know you were using it for a class. It would make me feel good to know that I am helpful. But that's the AC kicking on. But, you know, it's not mandatory. So let me kind of show you through my process. Yes, it's going to be me recording my screen. I know no one likes that. I am working on a Surface Pro 3. Personally, I would recommend, if you're doing, you can do it however you want. This is the way I'm doing it. Working with a tablet makes it very easy, and it's also something I'm comfortable with. It also allows me to revise it until it's clean enough that I'm comfortable with distributing it. I'm working in Photoshop because it's what I'm comfortable with using. My screen is disgusting. I'm aware of that. I'm sorry. My keyboard is even worse. You can also see me. Hi, how are you? So I will not actually be able to draw this way because I've got the hiccups. I have the camera in between me, you can actually see, in between me and the tablet, and that's just a little too far to be comfortable. So I'm going to kind of restage this, but I kind of wanted you guys just to see the basic setup. So a lot of the templates I end up drawing are just head or bust templates, sometimes full figure templates, but it's basically just a dummy for the students to put their own ideas on. And I find this is really useful for kids and adults who are not so comfortable with figure drawing, or they're not so comfortable with drawing faces. It gives them kind of a base where they can just focus on drawing the features they're interested in drawing, or practicing hair, or practicing clothing, or character design, whatever. It kind of frees them up a little bit. Now, for me, it's not intended to be something they use forever. I know some kids get to the template phase and they have a hard time leaving the template phase behind because it's a risk. I don't encourage them to stick with it forever, but for class purposes in class, this saves me a lot of time because they're not spending a lot of time drawing ahead and erasing, drawing ahead and erasing, drawing ahead and erasing. So that's what they could be doing at home instead. So I want to do, that's going to be slow with me now. I want to do front, side, and back profiles. And unfortunately, I just can't do it with the computer being this slow. So I'm going to close some stuff and get back. All right, let's hope that's better. Not really, but a little bit. So I'm starting with a basic circle for my template. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it 3 times. And usually when I'm designing templates, I do them, I create like a large master copy and then I rescale them to be smaller and to fit multiple on a page. I don't always do it like that, but you know, I frequently do. So this is going to end up being our front view. And I'm not really trying to demonstrate how I draw faces. I've got buku tutorials where I demonstrate how I draw faces, so that's not really my goal for this. I'm really more demonstrating how I generate templates to then distribute to my students. And what this is it's going to be a base for me, so I'm sketching it, and then I'll redraw it later when it's kind of cleaned up. sometimes what I'll do is I'll sketch it and then print it out and ink it. I might as well make this work as a face template. And originally I'd planned on doing male and female templates, but I'm just going to make a generic template, I think, for this go round. Kind of want to taper the face in a little bit. And to me, this is a big part of lesson plans, is generating assets. You know, there are printables, there are worksheets. What do I want to say? Not just lesson plans. There are art lesson plans available, but I just feel kind of weird. I have all this art education. I just feel kind of weird using somebody's lesson whole cloth. And part of it is I'm a bit of a control freak, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I have all these years of art experience. I do all this drawing. I have all this field background. And to not utilize it to generate my own assets when possible is, in my opinion, kind of a shame. I mean, I don't necessarily expect other people to do it. It does take a lot of time. Okay, so I'm lining up my circles, and I'm going to use this to help me kind of figure out how I'm going to draw how I'm going to do the profile view. So, like, I would say there's probably a healthy amount of hubris. It's not that I think I do, like, the world's best templates and printables, because I don't, but these are mine. It allows me, because I'm comfortable with them, it allows me to teach from them. I can explain what's going on. And it also allows me to put a lot of my education to, you know, positive use, to good use. And I'm really just sketching so that everything's in place right now, and then I'm gonna go in and tighten things up a little bit more on a second pass, because this is a little bit sketchy to hand. And when I mean sketchy, I don't mean like sketchy as in, like, you know, shady. I mean sketchy as in it's like handwriting, you know, like other people can't always read your handwriting, or like a shorthand. Other people can't always read your shorthand. There's a lot of extemporaneous information that might be confusing to them. So I'm just sketching it in, and then I'm gonna simplify it and clean it up so it's just the information they need, which is gonna be mainly facial landmarks and where the hairline starts. And where the ears are, because that's actually very important for drawing hair, since the hair wraps around the ears. And I also like doing this because for many, many years I was kind of learning from books on my own time. Like, even though I was in art classes, my teachers' teaching styles often didn't really work with how I learned. So I would just kind of take notes during class and then go home and look things up and study and study and study and study and study. I don't know if that's the ADHD. I don't know if it's the teaching style, because with art classes, sometimes art teachers assume you just know how to do everything. And that's, you know, because they might get students who pick things up quicker than others. I was not one of the ones. I always said, and I said it as a joke, but I do think it's kind of true, it takes me about 3 times as long to learn something as it takes other artists. So I know that about myself, so I try to be patient with myself, and I try to be kind to myself. And And like constructing the head from different views, my channel is certainly not the only place where you could learn that. Proko, I believe, has some great tutorials. The way I do it is a combination of Paul Hudson's methods and Glenn Vilppu's methods, and you should be able to find Glenn Vilppu's drawing tutorials online. And mine have been kind of changed quite a bit to suit the cartoony art style that I have. Okay, so I'm gonna put everything in folders now. See, I lined them all up. I don't know if you can see, sorry. I lined them all up so that they, you know, I can make sure all the landmarks hit in the same places. But they're not intended to just be in a line like this. But I guess you could. It doesn't really matter. I was actually gonna do them in a line horizontally. If there's room. There might not be room. I don't think there is room. Okay. Time to get creative. Because I want there to be enough room for, yeah, you can get 3 heads in a row if you crunch them real tight. And some people's hairstyles are real tight like that. But I wanted to give the Art Squad kids room to kind of be able to draw hairstyles that they want to draw. So what I'm gonna do, even though it does take up more paper, that's not necessarily always a bad thing. Having room to work is not a bad thing. So I'm gonna try to figure out a way to get these heads, because this is already sized for 8.5 by 11. So I worked in the size that we would be printing. Okay, I think that's better. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drop the opacity for all of them. No, not that far. And I'm just gonna try and tighten up all 3 of them. And I can also go into that folder that has had the opacity reduced, and I can add another layer, and I can like denote facial features like a chin that I might want to include. So I'm trying to do these, sorry, kind of gender neutral, because frankly, I guess I just don't feel like doing twice the work. Sorry, kiddos. And unfortunately, it's kind of challenging for me to find a comfortable position. So I guess you can look at my face instead of other places, I guess, and not the screen, because it's just kind of a challenge to show both. I really need like a shoulder. Someone invent this, like a shoulder strap mount, and it just comes over my shoulder. That would be great. And normally when I'm working on these things, I'm working on my lap, like on the sofa. I am doing this in here, light, bright as the sun for you guys. We'll try it on the lap. I don't know how. So usually I kind of work like this, which is super great for your back. And the keyboard often gets in the way. Yes, I can remove it. I'm currently choosing not to. So one of the things I'm debating how much I want to talk about in Art Squad is different people have different hairlines. Like I have a bit of a widow's peak. Joseph has a 3 head. I have a 5 head because I have a huge forehead, and I used to be kind of self-conscious about it, and I just don't care anymore. You know, women used to pluck their hairlines so that they look more intelligent. I don't know why we think that makes people look more intelligent other than giant cranium, but I just have a big head and I have a big forehead. So, and something else that's kind of funny is that artists often base characters and features off their own, because that's what we see the most. So there's people who like to speculate that the Mona Lisa is actually Da Vinci, and it's like, because there's all these shared facial features, and it's like, well, if you ask an artist, not an art historian, that's not an uncommon thing for us to do. I'm just gonna put in little doo-doo nostrils, because I want them to take these faces and make them their own. I don't want them to be too stymied, I guess, by what I've put down, which sometimes can be a problem. I mean, I'm always learning new ways to present material and new ways to make art more accessible. So, you know, if this method doesn't work, I've like helped them. I've like sat down next to them and helped them draw their own. I've come and personally drawn one for them. I've shown them how to turn them into cats and all kinds of animals. So you just, to me, if you got the time, because that's always the big constraint for me, is there just isn't the time. If you got the time, I really like to sit and work with the student. And that's one of the big reasons I really think I'm more geared towards private, like not public school teaching, but like workshops or individual classes, is because it can, when you have a class of 30 kids, it can be really hard to give them all the time they need. So one thing I want to make sure I do is I want to make sure I kind of represent the basic hairline correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and look that up. Oh, there's so many ugly images. Whew. This makes for a long day, though. And one of the things I'm actively not really trying to do is I'm not trying to present this as like anime style hair, even though I do take some influence from anime when I'm drawing. I mean, that was kind of formative. Reading manga was kind of formative for me, but I have a more cartoony style, and I like to think of my work as like a combination of my influence, my US and French and Canadian inspirations, and, you know, anime and manga, and shoot, a big old boatload of Disney in there. So sorry, it's hard for me to talk and things sometimes. So I'm not trying to present it as any really specific thing other than the way I do it. And that doesn't make it the only way. And that's something else when I'm teaching, and that's something I actually like and want to see more of with Art Squad, is I have a co-host and they do things differently than I do. And I think that's really great because I want to really model to the kids that different artists do things their own way. Like every artist has kind of their own path for things. Ooh, this is kind of ugly, but I'll just have to live with it. I think that's something that gets kind of like every professional art class, I feel like kind of focuses more on do as I do and as I say. And it can be, when you're teaching younger people, it can be kind of a challenge to get them to like, hey, try it this way, and then you can try it your way. Usually the tack I take, or I'll try, like, I'll say like, try it, and if it doesn't work for you, we'll figure something else out, you know, because I don't want to just completely poop on what they like to do and what's working for them, because when you do that, you can like chase somebody out of art entirely. You basically crush everything they like and are doing and that they like about themselves, and then they have to start all over again, and many kids will just decide, many people, even adults, will just decide it's just not worth it and give up. So that's something I try never to do when I'm teaching. It doesn't matter what age group, because I think there's great, like, even the most novice artist who draws very naively, very roughly, there's still a lot of great things about that. Like there's a dynamism and there's usually a lot of creativity and there's a lot of interesting choices. So I don't want to discourage them into getting rid of that. I want them to like find a way to mesh improvement with what they already like about their art. And in oh man, we had like for Art Squad we had like a you as an artist bio, like asking them to draw, and we also asked them some questions. And some of the questions are like, what do you want to get better at drawing? What do you think you're good at drawing? And we did get some answers, but it took so much teeth pulling just to get that. So, you know, while I would love to build on what they already like about their art and what they personally want to improve on, we've had some trouble getting them to respond. Mostly because we're getting them after school, so if they have ADHD, they're shot. Like, I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm not diagnosing anyone, but you get 5 kids, surely one of them is probably ADHD. Or has something else going on, you know? So it's just really hard to get them to... Oh, I'm so iffy about this template because I made the face really long, but adult faces are often longer. Yeah. I have to remind myself it doesn't have to be your best work. But I also want it to be good enough, because kids are picky. I want it to be good enough that they will want to actually use it. That's kind of the bummer about it kind of getting done at the end of the day. You know, you end up, and I know you guys know. You end up just kind of burnt by the time you get around to being able to do it. You're just so tired. There's nothing really left. And I did take a break and I had a snack. But I'm still kind of burned. Basically what I'm trying to do is I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this year other than I am tired. I have drawn it 5 times and I will draw it probably 5 more before it is the way I want it to be. Anyway, they don't have to be, see, that's another thing about creating templates, is that if they are too good, sometimes your students will not want to use them because they don't want to waste them. You can print more. Or you might be setting kind of too high a bar and they feel like they can't really level up to that or match up to that. And some people just take a "so I won't even try" approach, which I understand because I feel that way sometimes, but I don't encourage it, and I do try to combat it when I can, in others and in myself, you know, because like if you don't take a risk, if you don't try, then you're never gonna grow and you're never gonna surpass the past you. And man, doing good and bad. Sometimes preparing for class just really shows me all the ways I still need to grow myself. It's humbling. Ugh, I'm gonna fix these, man. They feel so long to me. see lots of people have, where am I going with this? I too have problems with my own art sometimes. Often. What artist doesn't? But I think it's important also to like model, like, you know, people do have frustrations with their art. They do, different artists do struggle with their art, and that's okay. That's part of, you know, striving to become better, and that being frustrated with your art will help you, fuel you to do more studies and do more practice and to learn new things and to push your boundaries. So, like, don't take my frustration as like a negative thing. When you're frustrated, that's a good thing. It's showing you areas you want to improve on, and it's showing you, brain keeps blanking. I'm so sorry. It's showing you kind of like what the next steps will probably be in terms of how to continue your artistic journey. So, you know, it's hard sometimes to keep that in mind and to kind of reprocess, reframe that frustration, and reframe how you feel about yourself in your own art. But sorry, looking at something that I'm just like, oh my god, don't like it. Gonna fix it. Gonna do it again until it's right, or at least attempt it. Sometimes singing things in a silly voice makes it so much easier to do it. Often if I'm doing chores I hate, I'll sing to Bowie or I'll sing about the chores. Just kind of makes it funny and a little more palatable. Even if it, and I was asking Joseph tonight, I was like, surely I must get on your nerves like all the time, and he's like, no, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, oh, I married the best person for me. I can be my true annoying self, and I won't annoy him. And we've been together for like 10 years before we got married, and I didn't realize that he was such a wonderful match for me until we got married. So. Fixing that nose. You know, at some point, it's taken me 5 years of YouTube to feel comfortable singing in front of y'all. I mean, they're just goofy little songs. Like, I'm not, like, trying to impress anybody with my wit and ability. But it's still being vulnerable, and it's still opening myself up to criticism, especially because I do actually really like to sing, and I used to be involved in the choir, and I had a pretty decent voice. So please don't judge these silly ditties as, like, my true ability. I ended up giving this non-binary person, had to remember the word, my brain was thinking MB, but I wanted, anyway, this non-binary person, this gender-neutral person, a lot of my facial features, so I Da Vinci'd it. Except for the chin. Oh, it kind of looks like my brother when he was a kid. Oh, that's what happens when you take my facial features and you give them to a male. It looks like my brother. It's a little weird. It also kind of looks like 11 from Stranger Things, which isn't necessarily bad. So I need to save this. I cannot believe I've been working on this for as long as I have, and I haven't saved it, because that's just a recipe for crying. And I have a folder these days for Art Squad. I just need to find it. Because now I'm going to zoom out and make some further revisions. See, this is why I do a lot of the templates digitally. Also, I can do a lot of manipulation and rotating and resizing and kind of reframing everything, and that makes my life so much easier than redrawing it 60 billion times. So basically, and this is just my opinion, I don't really like doing studies on the computer. I do realize it is infinite paper. I do realize you are not killing as many trees. I'm all for it if you can do it. It's just, it's never clicked for me the same way. Pencil on a piece of paper, flipping the pages, just something about that clicks for me in a way that the computer doesn't. I think I get stymied by all my options. But when I'm doing studies, when I'm creating templates, when I'm creating resources, then, you know, I really like, or when I'm sketching on top of a thumbnail I've already drawn, then I really like working digitally because, or at least for the sketch stage, I really like working digitally because it allows me to, you know, basically infinitely fix something until it looks the way I want it to look. And that's one of the reasons I think the digital versus traditional arguments are kind of annoying, because like a lot of traditional artists do a part of the process, or many parts of the process. Oh, I gotta turn Discord off. Not tonight. Shoot. Le brain. Many traditional artists, especially comic people, do parts of their process digitally. And so it kind of makes the argument that, and to be frank, like, there are some fine artists who poo-poo on digital art, and I'm not talking about them. They're just kind of weird. Oh, selection. But like, I don't know any like comic artists or even any illustrators who like dump on digital art, because a lot of us are secretly using it. Secretly, I'm not hiding that I'm using it. It's just people don't pay attention. A lot of us are using it as part of our process, but I guess it doesn't fit the narrative that you know, oh, traditional artists hate digital art and they don't treat it like real art. Like, I know there are people, especially people who don't know anything about drawing, who do that, and I'm legit sorry, that's garbagey. But like, a lot of traditional artists use a lot of digital processes because it makes the job easier. It just does. I mean, I did so many selections and moved so many things. I'll show you guys in a second. So many things on that face to make it look more like what I had in mind, because it's just not going for me tonight. Couldn't have done it without the digital. Digital makes it magic. Digital makes it magic. Makes it easier to do. Okay, it looks a lot like a cross between my younger brother and Elle from Stranger Things. I don't hate it. That's fine with me. I don't care. I should have just drawn Elle to begin with the shaved head. That would have been so perfect. Why did I not think of that? That will be part of my reference study tomorrow. Okay, so another thing, and I'm not really happy about this, but hear me out. So another thing is, usually what I would do is I would do a bunch of studies and then I would create my templates. Because of the timing, it is important that if we're going to get these out to the kids, we do it sooner rather than later. I'm not done doing my studies. They're just taking longer than I expected. But I want to make sure my kids have the resources they need to feel confident doing this lesson. Even though it's not a lesson, it's not a class. So I'm kind of changing my order of operations so that I can get the resources out to them. But usually what I do is I do the templates after I've done a bunch of studies, because then I feel like I have a really clear idea of what I'm trying to convey. So I'm not super happy with my order of operations. Like, I'm looking at stuff and I'm like, I wish I could have spent more time studying this before I crank this thing out. I mean, if you're watching this because you are a teacher, then you already know we often have to do things. Even if we've prepared and we put the time in, sometimes we got to do stuff before we really feel confident doing it. And, you know, you just make the best of it. Just trying to tighten a few things up here and there. How do I always draw faces kind of crooked? Back up. Because I didn't do a line action, girl, that's why. Now the eyes are crooked. I'm sorry, I'm going to end up spending a lot of time finessing this, that isn't really necessary. So I'll tell you what, I will check in with you guys once I've got this figured out. Okay, I don't love them, but they're basically done, and I am going, it's already late, so sending them to my co-hosts right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sleep on it and try to get it out to them tomorrow. And who knows, maybe tomorrow morning I'll end up completely redoing it, which I really hope not, because that would make this time legit kind of a waste. But it wouldn't surprise me, because that is definitely a thing. What are you doing? I was messing with opacity. It's definitely a thing I would do, is be like, I really don't like them, and I would totally redo them, but that is it. That's how it go. Well, even it's sometimes better to have something that, as an artist, you're like, I know I could do better, but you just live with it because you got a time crunch, than to spend forever finessing something that is never going to be perfect. So you would just finesse it forever. I say as I do another selection and move something again. And that's one of the downsides with digital, and it's one of the reasons I don't recommend you do your drawing practices digitally, because instead of just like scrapping it and redrawing it, you'll just spend forever finessing it. Whereas you might be better served scrapping it and redrawing it and just getting faster and faster, because the thing about scrapping it and redrawing it is every time you redraw it, you're putting practice in, you're learning new things. Whereas if you're using the selection tool and you're just moving things around, I don't think, me personally, from my experience, I don't think that has the same purpose as manually doing it. You're building fine motor skills by redrawing it. And it does seem like a waste of time, and it does seem like a waste of paper, but I've lived by that rule, so your mileage may vary. You gotta find what works for you and be open to change and open to new ideas. Since like I wrote that for church camp, inspirational music. Okay, look, that's gotta be good enough. That's gotta be good enough. Hit and say, it's gotta be good enough. Gotta be good enough. All that talking, and this is the template. But at least it's basically done. I'm done with it. And it's just something for them to be able to practice drawing hair-ons. I don't know why I'm being so persnickety, but I wanted to show a fairly realistic hairline so that they had something realistic to practice with. So we'll hit, oh, already saved, good job. And that is about it for tonight. All right, so we finished the template. We did some pages of hair studies. I still want to do so many more hair studies, especially like the hairline and male hairstyles, or hairstyles typically coded as male or typically worn by men. And because hairstyles don't have an innate gender. and maybe record the tutorial tomorrow, but that might happen on Wednesday. Either way, that's fine. So something else I want to do is I actually want to print out some of the hair templates so I can use those when I'm doing the tutorial, even if I really not super happy with the art. I'm being too critical of it, really. It's not that bad. I don't know. It's not that great, but it's not that bad. It's a template. I'm taking it too seriously. And that's one of the things that when I'm teaching, I really have to work on, is not taking everything too seriously, because you can really stress out your students, you can really stress out yourself. You gotta laugh at stuff, and you gotta just kind of accept and deal with whatever happens, because stuff's always gonna happen. Plans, really plans. You know what I mean? Like, you can make them, but that doesn't mean they're gonna happen. So finally, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna print this out so that it's waiting for me for tomorrow. So that's one last thing I gotta do tomorrow. I have to be careful when I'm doing stuff like this, because I do have a tendency to push too hard and burn out. Now I get to play the guessing game of which printer is my printer. It's fun for the whole family. And I may end up revising this. I probably do. And honestly, there's a bunch of really old templates that I have for like the chibi drawing stuff that I really want to redo, because they were okay. They were passable at the time, but now I'm kind of like about them. But it's nice to have something like that ready to go. So like if you are in a pinch, you don't have to completely generate it from scratch. But basically, that's how I create templates that people can then draw all over if they want to. Or, as one of my smart students did, he found the lines too strong on the printout he printed at home, so he just flipped it over and drew on the back because of the black. He drew on the back because you could see the black lines of the printout, because his mom had printed it in black and white, through the paper, and I thought that was really clever. So, true to my word, I slept on these template designs, and while I was getting up and ready this morning, I had a better idea, and I kind of hate when that happens, because, well, I love hate when it happens, because I get to do it all over again. Yay! But also, I get to do it better. I'm glad I had the idea. Yay! So it's definitely kind of a catch-22. And definitely goes to show you that when you're exhausted, you're not going to have your best ideas. And sometimes it's best not to push ourselves when we're that tired. But I did get a second wind last night, and that's kind of what propelled me to do it. It's just my brain hadn't fully recovered. The energy was there, the soul was not. So back to the Surface Pro 3 with the stylus. What I'm going to do is just something very simple this time. It's just going to be an oval, a neck, and maybe a bust. And it's not even profile view, so they're still going to get the 3 views if they want it, but they're also going to get just a straightforward profile view, and that might be a little bit easier for some of them. Yep, we're back to this wonderful view again. This time, I'm going to keep it really simple. An oval. Extend the oval down. A long neckline. So it's more like a wig mannequin. And then a neckline. And I'm just going to clean that up. Do 3 per row, so you get 9, and that's about that. Alright, we've got that base shape refined, cleaned up, pop it in a folder, place it somewhere good, copy, copy. Oh, move please. want to make sure they're kind of evenly spaced out. Move over some. I do want to leave room for them to actually draw hair, and having this many designs on a page makes that more challenging. Ooh, we could do just 6. 6 is good. Okay, we're gonna save it because there is no point in my opinion, there's no point in just generating new work every single time. We're going to use this as base head. Ta-da! So I'm going to print this out. I'm also going to send this to my co-host along with the other designs, and we've got a couple of templates now ready for the how to draw hair demonstration. So I'm basically going to use these hair studies as my warm-up for the day. And your warm-up can be 10 minutes, it can be an hour. It really kind of depends on your needs and how much free time you have. I'm basically just gonna focus on this until Joseph is off his work call and we can haul the table that's outside inside. So I have a indeterminable amount of time to spend on this. But if it isn't long enough, if it's too short, I'll always come back to this later. I may use it also as my cool down in the evening. And I know some artists, myself also sometimes, some artists are like, cool down, what luxury is that? But it is basically just kind of designed to help you wind down your thoughts. So if you were working on something that was really intense all day long, it might be helpful so you can go to sleep at night, or so you can kind of close out your day, to just do something kind of simple and relaxing that's still creative and artistic. So as you guys know, I've been dual recording, so hopefully those have been beneficial to y'all. You really don't have to do it pencil and paper if you don't want to. That's not a hard and fast rule. It's something I really like, but if you do it digitally, it's a lot easier to share it. So it really is a your mileage may vary situation. And if you are teaching a longer form group, you guys may decide to do this in like a draw pile or something, and everybody working on the same thing. So you may choose to do your warm up like that. Like when we do our art squad meetings, we try. Sometimes we're not successful. It really kind of depends on where the kids are at that day. We try to spend around 15 minutes doing warm-ups, usually of animals, where we're just drawing them from reference. Sometimes the kids get really into the warm-up and we just spend the whole time doing the warm-up and chatting. Sometimes one kid is really into it, so they'll continue working on drawing animals, and the other ones will switch topics. Like I said though, Art Squad is a club, not a class, so there isn't any reason for us to have to force them to switch topics if they're not ready to switch topics, which is nice because they can kind of work at their own speed and they can kind of work on what they're more interested in. Alright, so it is the day before the Art Squad meetup, so anything I'm going to get done I'm gonna have to try to get it done today because unfortunately I have something else I have to do tomorrow morning. So generally when I'm preparing for classes, and again, this is a club meeting, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm treating it like I'm teaching a full class on how to draw hair, and I'm also recording a tutorial for it. I would spend the first week before the class preparing for it, especially if it's something I don't do all the time, or it's something I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. So like drawing folds in clothing, drawing hair. I spend a lot of time doing studies. I spend a lot of time doing prep. I probably will also spend a lot of time creating templates, as you guys saw. If I'm teaching it in person, kind of depending on the subject matter, I'll also spend a lot of time creating a presentation, as well as handouts that may include reference sketches for them to practice with or links to other resources. It kind of depends on the age group I'm teaching, where I'm teaching, how long a period of time I'm teaching, and if I have follow-up classes with that same group of people. Come on, Bowie. Why are you being squirrely? So, yesterday I had hoped to get back to doing studies and basically finish up doing the studies and maybe recording the tutorial. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen, so it is really important that I get that done today. I am sure this is not a surprise to any of you. If you were used to preparing at school, at a public library, basically someplace quiet, a bunch of us have lost that option, or that option has changed. I've always had to do my prep at home because as a gig teacher, they don't give you things like prep resources. You've got to be joking. So this is not uncommon for me, but I know I struggle with it, and I'm sure many of you struggle with it too. It can be really difficult to maintain your focus when you're working on prep, when you're recording tutorials, when you're making class materials, when you've got everything else going on behind you. The computer restarted on me last night with no notification, and I lost my how to draw hair notes that I'd been taking. Normally I write them in Google Docs, but a notepad is a little bit more streamlined, and then I'll copy and paste them into a Google Docs. That didn't happen this time. I'm sure it'll come to me. But these things happen.
So one final thing I wanted to study before recording the tutorial were hairlines, and I wanted to kind of get a few different views on where the hairline falls on the head. It can be challenging to find accurate information for this, so I chose to work from several different photo references in this instance to try and get a clear idea of where the hairline actually falls on the human head.
Okay, so lost notes, that's a big bummer. It's never fun to work on something and lose your notes. My friends who are writers know how bad it is when you lose your writing notebook. My fellow comic artists know how bad it is when you lose your sketchbook. Never a good time. But that doesn't have to stop me. A lot of what I need is actually still in my sketchbook. It's just not in a verbal form. So it is going to take some thought and some effort to reprocess it again. Or I could just opt not to and try to trust myself to know it. Now, when I'm doing great, when I'm not burnt out, when my ADHD is not at an all-time high, when I'm feeling like my brain is really clicking along, I love flying by the seat of my pants because I know the stuff. I know the material, and often that's when I produce my best material. But when I'm burnt out, when my family has completely drained me of energy and brain power, and when my ADHD is at an all-time high, it's hard to trust yourself like that. And that's often when my teaching becomes really stiff and really rote and really boring. So finding a way to protect that last spark is a challenge for me. I'm sure it's a challenge for many of you who have very needy families or very intense pets, or you have kids. I'm sure it's something you struggle with too. So if you've got tips other than make time for yourself, because I think this just goes beyond make time for yourself, let me know down in the comments. So when starting my tutorial,
I want to break it down, I think, into 3 basic parts. So I've opened a new notepad and I'm going to take notes about what I want to cover in the tutorial. And that's great because even if I'm in flow, even if I'm working really well, even if I'm producing a lot, it's good to have those notes so I can make sure I hit the points I want to hit. And I had written that down in the notes before that got eaten. So it's truly heartbreaking to try and like retrace my steps and figure that back out again and get back into it. So let's see. For the first part, I think I want to talk about hairline. So front, side, and back. This is the same for kids, it's the same for men and women unless you're balding. People do have different hair patterns, but this is a basic how to draw hair tutorial, so I don't want to go too much into that. Basically the same, regardless of gender or age, does change based on hair patterns, calyx, and balding. Then I want to talk about the front part, the sides, and the back. Front, and back ends of hair. Then I want to talk about hair movement and calyx. I want to talk about types of hair. So straight, wavy, curly, and kinky. And then I think I want to talk about maybe how to draw hair from reference. And maybe walk them through a few different versions. A few examples. All right, that sounds like a pretty good game plan. So just to recap for you guys, I made notes of what I want my tutorial to include. This could be the same for a class. Sometimes I'll walk in with printed notes. Sometimes my presentation will basically be my notes. But having a game plan, don't just go in and be like, I'll do whatever the winds tell me to do. Having a game plan, even if you go off the game plan, even if you go off the rails, is really important when you're teaching art because you want to be able to get back on the rails again. And it is so easy to get derailed when you're teaching art, especially in a club setting where the topic of conversation can very easily veer off into other things. So we're going to start with the hairline, the front, the side, and the back views, which is basically the same regardless of gender or age, but it does change based on hair patterns, calyx, and balding. We're going to talk about the front, sides, and back zones of the hair. We're going to talk about hair movement and calyx. And for the most part, think of hair as a fluid. Maybe then we'll also talk about breaking the hair down into basic shapes. Breaking hair down into basic shapes. Types of hair, straight, wavy, curly, and kinky. How to draw hair from reference, and then walk them through a few examples. So that sounds like a pretty solid game plan. You see, as I was going back over it and talking to you guys, it gave me further examples or further ideas for what to talk about, which is great. This is why often I'll have somebody else or a couple of somebody else's take a look at my presentations. Is it too long? Does it talk about things in enough depth? Is it too in-depth? Are there enough exercises? Are there enough opportunities for the students to practice? Are there enough opportunities for the students to get up and walk around? I will even build in breaks into my presentations to remind myself, because as someone with ADHD, I have a really poor internal clock. So building breaks into my presentations is a great way for me to remind myself, like, hey, let's take a break, and to give my students a chance to kind of absorb the information so that they're not just like overwhelmed with info, because when you overwhelm students with info, nothing seeps in. It just kind of sleets off. And this is particularly important when you have younger students who may not be taking notes, or if you're teaching in like a more relaxed environment, like for a store or at a library, you want to make sure they have enough opportunities to actually internalize the information and ask you questions. And that's usually how my break times are spent. I get to get a sip of water, I get to use the bathroom, and then I'm answering people's questions the rest of the time. So
if you can, work in breaks for yourself too, because it does give you a chance to refresh yourself. But often as teachers, we don't actually get breaks. So I'm about to start recording the tutorial, but I just wanted to show you guys the materials that I'm going to be using in the tutorial one more time. If you are one of my patrons on Patreon, you have access to these as well as to most of my class materials. If you're not, you can join me for $2 a month at patreon.com/natosoup, and you'll not only get access to teaching materials like this one, but I'm going to start sharing the majority of my tutorials as patron or paid member exclusive. So if you like what I do and you want to help me continue doing what I'm doing here on the channel, consider joining my Patreon. So we have the base head templates, no features, could be back or front, very simple. We have the front, side, and back views. Then I have some older printouts from some of my presentations. So these are to demonstrate different hair types, but also to show different points where the hair is coming out of the head. So whether it's cowlicks or ponytails, just anything that affects the hair movement. We have basic hair, like how to break hair down into basic shapes. We have the different zones of the hair. We have how to break hair down a little bit more refined with more detail. And then we have how style changes how you draw hair. So these are all going to come into play while I'm working on the tutorial. And again, because when we're doing Art Squad, it's very dependent on where the kids are that day, how the class is going. So we may not even get to all of this during Art Squad. I'm okay with that. That's not the point. But I do like having it handy for people who do want more. Same reason I am recording the tutorial. Speaking of, this video will not include that tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the tutorial using my newer smartphone. This video and that video are going to be edited in VN Editor. I use a long Rode mic stand with a couple of adapters to hold my camera in place. I'm going to be working both in my sketchbook and with my templates. Usually I like to use red and blue pencils when I'm doing these kind of tutorials. Mine got packed up when we moved and I don't know where they are. So I'm just going to be using regular color pencils today. That's my preference. Work with what you like to work with. I've got some reference up on the screen, and I will be continuing to reference different hairstyles from actual people at different points during the tutorial. So if you're interested in the tutorial itself, I probably will share it to the public the same way I shared this one to the public. But I do ask that if you are a teacher, please contact me if you're going to share that tutorial with your students. I just like to have a good idea of how my work is being presented when it's not being presented on YouTube. So you can just reach out to me via email at becca.hilburn@gmail.com and just let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And maybe let me know what else your students are interested in learning. And that might be another incentive to back the Patreon.
So these are some snippets from the tutorial. I'm going to release the full tutorial here on YouTube soon. Patrons get it first, of course, but this is just to kind of give you guys just an overview of what that typically looks like if you're new to the channel and you're not really familiar with my tutorials. But as you guys remember, we broke this down into different segments, and I took notes on that I could refer to while I was recording this. And I typically will do this in different segments, and sometimes I'll take breaks in between. It kind of depends on flow and how that day is going. And recording it in segments also makes it a little easier to narrate later on, because I can cut things or I can time lapse things, and it doesn't have to take, real time.
recorded. Now all that's really left for tomorrow is to talk about drawing hair with the kids, which honestly is going to be the easier part because like I kept telling you guys, Art Squad is an hour long. We're going to be spending the first part of that drawing rabbits. If enough kids don't show up, we might spend the whole time drawing rabbits. If enough kids do show up, we'll segue into drawing hair about halfway through. But some of the kids may decide they want to keep drawing rabbits, or they may want to draw something completely different. Because, again, this is not a class. We're not going to force them to do anything. It's more like a club. And if they want to draw something else, more power to them. But I still prepped for it like I would prep for a class because I wanted to show you guys some of my prep process, kind of help shed some light, I guess, on how I approach teaching classes. I'm going to record, or I'm going to share one more behind the scenes segment with you guys where I actually show you how I set up and get ready for Zoom classes, regardless of whether or not we're teaching them anything or if we're just hanging out with them. But I'm going to do that tomorrow. I use a Logitech HD, wait, no, that's not the name, but it's one of these. I'll have to look up what this one is and tell you guys. For a while, this was the best on the market, and very expensive too, considering literally everything has a webcam in it, and it's not even that great of a webcam. My phone actually has better recording quality, which is kind of like, but there are some pretty decent knockoffs. I actually own a couple of them. So I'd like to show you guys at least one of those knockoffs at some point in the future, because it's got to be more affordable than this. And I usually do kind of a dual recording system where I have one camera for my face so the kids can see my expressions. And I find teaching students of any ages, people just want to see your face. They want to see your expression. They're more likely to make a connection if there's a face cam available. So I do use the face cam when I'm doing a lot of my streams as well. It just gives people a chance to see how I'm reacting to the chat, although there's a lot of like me squinting because I can't read. So honestly, now that I've got the tutorial out of the way, I feel like a big weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I kept hinting earlier about how the ADHD making the struggle a little harder than it has in the past. I guess I was just really second guessing myself and giving myself a lot of anxiety. But I did the prep, I did take notes, and I ended up remembering a lot of the notes. It wasn't perfect, but I did end up remembering a lot of the notes as I recorded the tutorial, so good on me. And having those notes that I could refer to, where I kind of outlined what order I wanted to do things in. I did change the order a little bit, but it allowed me to go back and add in content so that I was sure it wasn't missing. So all in all, I feel pretty good about this tutorial. I feel like we hit the basics, which was my goal. I also did some lead-in questions like, would you like to see me do XYZ? If you're interested in more tutorials like ABC, let me know down in the comments below. Not only does that help with engagement, but it also helps me know what kind of stuff people want to see. So if there are any videos you guys are interested in, if you want to learn more about my teaching process or how I prepare for other types of things, let me know down in the comments below. I don't know how feasible they'll be, but your ideas and your suggestions always inspire me. So I'm definitely open to it if you guys are open to it. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow as I prepare for Art Squad. So join me for getting the desk kind of retooled and getting my mind in the game to teach them how to draw hair. Or not. It's a toss-up, but I'm here for it. Okay, so it's about 30 minutes before Art Squad officially starts. 15 minutes before I'm usually, required to kind of log on. So I need to get my desk cleaned up, and I also need to get my setup in place. So this one's pretty simple. Mostly can just unscrew my F-clamp and screw in my webcam. What's neat about this mount is that it can hold the webcam in a document viewer orientation. So, pointing down. Like I said, I have another webcam, not that you can see it right now, but I have another webcam on the monitor. Now we use Zoom for this, but we have OBS set up to record both cameras. So I'm going to go ahead and open up OBS. other side. And you can maybe just barely see it. So we've got the desktop view. I'll adjust it a bit. And then I use XSplit to run the secondary camera. These days I have to sign in to get it to remove my background. Okay, so that part is mostly done. I do also need to adjust the properties on my background. So I'm going to go to configure video. I'm going to fix the white balance because the white balance is a little off. And also set it to not autofocus because then it really flips out. And just kind of try to get it aligned with the desktop. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so that's mostly set up. When I'm going to be ready to run Zoom, I'm going to need to click Start Virtual Camera, and this is something you would want to set up ahead of time. So using OBS in Zoom, if I were the person who was running the Zoom chat, if I was the Zoom chat moderator, it would give me a lot of additional functionality in addition to Zoom functionality. But I am not the moderator, so for example, if I wanted to show my desktop or if I wanted to show the view I was looking at in Google, like we're drawing animals from reference, it'll just show a blank screen. It just shows a black rectangle to them. My co-host has to be the one to do that. So Zoom can have its own hiccups. If you're running your own, it's probably not going to be a problem. But if you're working with somebody else, they're going to have to handle some of that. And that's to protect the students. That's to protect the viewers. I'm fine with it. I'm just pointing it out because that came as a surprise to both of us. And you don't want to be surprised by something like that. So webcam 1, webcam 2 are set up. I use a lavalier mic plugged in. Generally, to hear them, I use headphones. And these are the problem because these are always finicky to get them to pick up sound. And these are just the AKG USB-C headphones that came with my phone. But I'm going to have to play around with that to make sure I can actually hear them. Turn off the sound because if you have the sound on, it's going to create really bad echoes. And the kids actually don't realize that, and then they complain about the echoing. Ideally, they would all have headphones plugged in, and that way there would be no issues with echoing. But sometimes some 9-year-olds are very tech savvy, and some 9-year-olds are not tech savvy at all. So it just kind of depends on your audience, but that's something to keep in mind. And then I would need to play something so I could actually hear if these are working. Nope, these are always the problem. Always the problem. All right, so now we've got the audio visuals set up. It's just time to clean up the environment and to try to get into a good headspace for this. So something that my students, I hope, can't tell is there are many days where I start out kind of just not really feeling it. And then, you know, once we get rolling, I pick up steam and I'm starting to feel it. But the goal for me is to give them the best experience possible. They should not, unless I just had like an abysmally bad day, there's no such thing as bad days. And it's not because I'm trying to pretend like I'm living this perfect life or anything like that, but it is because this is a treat for them. This is an escape for them. This is a chance to hang out. And so it should be rewarding and fun and encouraging and positive. So it's important for me, if I can, to leave my bad day at the door. Sometimes you just can't. Like if something happens to a pet or a family member, sometimes it's best to just start off with like, hey guys, I apologize, I'm having a rough day. Usually if it's a pet, you can actually be like, you know, my pet's at the vet, and you guys know how tough that is, because
it also helps to create a bond. It also helps them adjust their expectations, and often if kids know you're having a rough day and they like you, they'll self-moderate their behavior so that they'll just be a little gentler on you. Now, it really depends on the kids you're teaching. I've been really fortunate that in all of the years that I've done gig teaching and volunteer teaching and student teaching, when I tell that to my students, regardless of the age, they're generally more gentle and more patient with me. But I've known people, I was one of those kids who, if I had a teacher I didn't like and they were having a bad day, I would just doodle the whole time. I would just check out, you know what I mean? And I had friends who would like actively act up. So, you know, it can go either way. They can be more compassionate and a little softer on you, or they can really make your day rough. So whether or not you want to tell them that is up to you. But when it is so bad that I can't get over it, but I can't cancel, then I disclose it to them. But I still try to bring my energy level up. I try to bring my mood up, my attitude up. It's just, my friends with pets or my friends with kids know that when something's happening to someone you love, sometimes it's hard to shake it off. And sometimes it's just a little bit better to be like, I'm having kind of a hard day today. I'm worried about my kid. They're in the hospital. You know, just lay it out there. I don't have that today. That is not what's going on today. So it is on me to get myself pumped up and ready for action. So the next thing I need to do is I need to clean off this table. It's full of painting stuff from other activities. Fortunately, they can only see the desktop. They cannot see the hoard all around it. So really, I just have to clean off the desktop and have that presentable. So I will do just that. All right, so desk has been cleaned off. I'm going to go ahead and prep it with my sketchbooks and the handouts that we may or may not be getting to. I also want to make sure that the materials I use for drawing are ready, so we're not spending a lot of time with me sharpening pencils. And since I work from home, Bowie is nagging to go outside, so I'm going to go ahead.
So here's
and
a
get him
snippet from the
pulped up
actual
so he can
Art
do that
Squad
while I prepare
meetup.
some of the
And I
rubbish.
know this is not super interesting for y'all to watch. It's a lot of the back of my head while I'm doodling. But you guys can see the document cam, or my webcam uses a document cam facing straight down. That gives participants a really clean view of what I'm actually drawing. On the screen, there's also a really small image of myself from a secondary camera. Basically, if you've watched my live streams, you guys kind of have an idea for the setup. And I utilize virtual cam on OBS to get it to stream to Zoom rather than going just straight from Zoom. Now, that does kind of limit some of the stuff I can do. Like I can't do desktop share in that mode, but it also adds a lot of flexibility when it comes to displaying my art and having multiple cameras going at one time.
Squad, we spent a lot of time drawing rabbits from reference. We attempted to talk about drawing hair, but the attention span was not quite there entirely. Fortunately, I have a how to draw hair tutorial that I'm going to be sharing with them. That way, if anybody feels like they missed out or they didn't get quite what they needed, they can watch that tutorial and hopefully learn some pointers. But in the Art Squad, we definitely have some pretty strong artists there, so my general advice of just practice drawing from reference hopefully will be taken to heart, and we'll see some significant progress, because I tell you guys,
Some of these kids are super duper smart and already really talented artists. So I always enjoy doing art squad. The kids always bring my energy levels up, and it's always fun to draw with them. It's almost like hanging out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on how I prepare for art squad. If I were preparing for, let's say, a 2-hour class, my preparation would be a little bit different, maybe more presentation and more handout heavy. I might generate even more templates and examples. But this gives you guys a pretty good idea of how much I prepare even for a really short tutorial. The next one I'm going to be working on is how to draw hands, which is an area I can certainly improve upon myself. So you guys know I'm going to be doing a boatload of studies. And remember, you don't have to be good at drawing, but if you're teaching art, I highly recommend you keep a sketchbook of some sort, either digital or physical. Whatever helps you get those visual ideas out into the world is great and works for you. It's about working for you, but I highly recommend you keep one. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. If you guys have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. If there's enough interest, I might even do a Q&A live stream about teaching art. So let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. I definitely don't mind. And I had a lot of fun recording this and sharing this with you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it. So I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Remember, if you're one of my amazing patrons on Patreon, you not only get early access to most of my videos, but you also get access to my class materials, including the templates that I make for my classes to print out, as well as access to my presentations. If you're a teacher and you'd like to use my assets in your classes, reach out to me via email and we'll chat about it. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye guys! So I hope you guys enjoyed this vertical slice of my class creation process. As I mentioned way hours ago at the beginning, it really varies based on what I'm teaching, where I'm teaching, and how long I'm teaching. If I'm teaching an 8-week class, that's very different from a 1-hour session. If I'm teaching 9 to 14-year-olds, it's very different from teaching adults. And if I actually know the age group I get to teach beforehand, I always try to curate how I present the material to their needs. And it's always a learning process. So gig teaching the way I do is a world full of unknowns, a world of twists and turns. You might get a group of 30-year-olds, you might get a group of 60-year-olds, you might get a group that has 60-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 5-year-olds. Sometimes you just don't know, but I enjoy being kept on my toes. I try to be up for the challenge, and I try to the best of my ability, reach the needs of every student in the time that I have. That's one of the reasons I have the YouTube channel, to provide additional resources and to provide additional education, to make it accessible. So again, if you guys have any questions about my art education preparation process, how I go about teaching classes, how I go about pitching classes, my work experience, or how I would prepare for an 8-week class, let me know down in the comments below. And if you like the work I create here on the channel, if you'd like to gain access to the templates I make for my classes, if you'd like early access to my tutorials, if you'd like access to my class presentations, you guys can join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup and help support this channel. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I wish you the best of luck with your own classes. And if you've got a secret technique that I haven't talked about, if you've got a surefire, really cool, maybe it's a class exercise, maybe it's a way to get shy students involved in the class, maybe it's a way you generate your own materials, I would love to hear about it. You guys can join me over on the Paintbox, my art-centric Discord server. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye guys!